In my universe, vampires has its own set of rules, mythology, and abilities that could have easily ruined the first chapter of Varian Keller's Vampire Killers if I tried to squeeze all of that in the very first chapter. And this was an interesting task for me as a beginner writer and a beginner writer of comic books in general. After crafting this universe, which is Venus Orion Comics, now I have to figure out a way to be able to introduce these concepts in such an organic way. And I think this was an interesting test for me as a beginner writer. Now, the thing I had to learn as a beginner writer is to not turn my characters into a mouthpiece for the author, which is me, to be able to explain the world to the readers as they're exploring Varian Keller's Vampire Killers. See, with Varian Keller's Vampire Killers, this pretty much introduces the supernatural aspects of my universe, which you can take a look at phase 1, which is called The Foundations. It's going to introduce 8 different concepts and what makes Venus Orion Comics Venus Orion Comics. And Varian Keller's Vampire Killers has a very huge tags to set up here as far as the framework for the whole supernatural aspect of Venus Orion Comics. And my vampires are very much different than what you expect from traditional vampires. They share or may share certain aspects and traits that traditional vampires may have within folklore itself, but their origins, their behaviors, their limitations, their factions, and positions within my universe are all connected to a much larger mythology. And when you spend years creating something like that, there's a temptation to pretty much try to explain everything immediately. And you want the readers to be able to understand all of that and how it works when you put all that work into it. You want them to know why your version is very different. But as a new writer, I had to be careful with that approach. If I tried to introduce the entire supernatural side of my universe at once, the story could have grown into something too large for me to even control, or for the reader to properly absorb and digest. So I had to make a decision. Varian Keller's Vampire Killers would not begin with the history of vampires, but instead I wanted to take a different approach. It would not begin with exploring every faction, power mechanics, supernatural rule, or historical events. Instead, it would begin with Hezekiah Draven searching for someone. So by starting with Hezekiah's search, I am now able to control how the world reveals itself to the reader. And that became a much easier and much more manageable way to approach these concepts, especially me as a beginner writer, because I didn't need to explain the entire universe in chapter 1 because most of that information wouldn't be revealed within the first chapter anyway. So instead, Hezekiah has become the reader's initial point of reference. The reader experiences Neodia through his limited perspective. He understands the more dangerous aspects of what's going on within the shadow world of Neodia than the average citizens. But even Hezekiah doesn't completely understand the forces operating around him. That limitation is actually important because if Hezekiah already understood everything, then there wouldn't be much for the readers to discover alongside him. So, instead of stopping the story to provide a list of what vampires can do and what they cannot do, I wanted the readers to be able to observe them. I want readers to be able to question their behavior, and I want readers to notice certain details and begin forming their own conclusions. Once I decided on that approach, the pressure of introducing the world was no longer as overwhelming that I would thought it was going to be. I didn't have to show readers everything, and this is something that I want to share with you beginner writers who are trying to introduce concepts. Everything doesn't have to be shown or explained at the very beginning. You have to be able to trust your readers to be able to understand certain concepts, especially when it's in comic format. You allow the reader to be able to observe through the paneling and the image, which I talked about the combination of a good writer and a artist and how those two together can create such a cohesive form of storytelling that allow readers to be able to follow without you having to say so much. So all I needed was to have Hezekiah and give him an objective and allow that objective to pretty much guide him and the reader through the world itself. So the objective was simple: find Alan Fleck. Alan Fleck is a dangerous figure or a dangerous vampire that's connected to Hezekiah's past, and Hezekiah is determined to find him. But he cannot simply walk through Neodelphia and discover where Alan is hiding. He needs information, and every piece of information also comes with another obstacle. That search eventually leads to Jasmine Mitchell, someone who may have connections to Alan Fleck and actually may know where Hezekiah can find him. And that is pretty much all I'm going to reveal about where this search takes him. Hezekiah believes he is searching for one man, but what he doesn't understand is how many interests overlaps within that search itself. I wouldn't describe Varian Keller's Vampire Killers as a detective story because Hezekiah himself isn't a detective, and the series isn't structured as a traditional police procedural. What I'm using is the investigation structure. Hezekiah follows the information available to him, and then Techlock searches for connections and assists them from the background. And then the police have their own perspective on what is happening in Neodelphia, and then the criminal underworld possesses information that other characters may not have. And meanwhile, the reader slowly realizes that nobody has the complete picture, and that is the distinction. The investigation is not the complete identity of the series, it is the doorway that allows readers to enter the story. Instead of having one character explain the entire world, each character contributes a different piece of information. Sometimes those pieces connect, and sometimes they contradict each other. And sometimes one character understands something another character completely misses. And that creates dramatic tension without requiring me to immediately reveal every answer. And because of this structure, it allowed me to introduce Neodelphia in a way that I wanted. Because Neodelphia isn't simply a location where characters happen to live. The city is a character itself, and the districts are divided. People are disappearing. The citizens are losing confidence in the guardian system that is supposed to protect them. The police are trying to maintain order within portions of the city that they believe have been abandoned. Criminal networks operate beneath the surface, and supernatural forces exist within the systems that the average citizens may not even recognize. I could have stopped the story and explained the history behind all of that, but I didn't want to explain Neodelphia to the reader. I wanted the reader to become suspicious of Neodelphia. I wanted them to look at the city and recognize that something was wrong before they fully understood why. Why don't certain citizens trust the system? How much do the police actually know? And who truly holds the power within the city itself? Those questions allows the setting to reveal itself through the story rather than through a history lesson. And the readers discovered Neodelphia by watching how different characters move through it. Hezekiah sees the city one way, Techlock sees it another way. The police has their own responsibilities and limitations. The criminal underworld operates through another set of rules. And the average citizen only understands what they can see what's happening around them. And it doesn't help that the Guardian news network also props up propaganda to the citizens. And the same approach applies to the vampires in my universe, because my vampires operate much differently. I could have just simply explained everything as far as their abilities, the hierarchy, and also their limitations. But knowing the rules isn't the same as actually experiencing them. I want the reader's understanding of these vampires through actually observing them. And chapter 1 doesn't answer every last one of those questions because it isn't supposed to. And if you have read chapter 1, then you've already seen how these perspectives begin to cross over to characters without them having the complete picture. And if you haven't read chapter 1 yet, you can definitely go to my website at VenusOrionComics.com and pick up a digital or physical copy so you can be able to follow along the investigation of Hezekiah Draven himself as you can form your own conclusion leading into chapter 2, which will have its own campaign spring of 2027 on Kickstarter. So no, Varian Keller's Vampire Killers isn't a detective story, but it's a supernatural story that begins with an investigation. And when it comes to this, it allows me to introduce Hezekiah and guide the readers through Neodelphia, establish the existence of vampires, and begin revealing the larger conflict without overwhelming the audience with so much information. Hezekiah believes he's searching for one person, the police believe they're investigating crimes and disappearance, and the citizens of Neodelphia believe that the system that is sworn to protect them is now failing. But overall, no one has the complete picture. And this is exactly where I want readers to begin. So I want to ask you guys in the comment sections below, if you are a new writer or you're trying to get into writing, how would you approach introducing concepts to the reader without overwhelming them? Do you take my approach where I try to do it much more organically, where I have different character perspectives and how they view the world to introduce readers to the concepts that I'm trying to present in front of them? Or would you do the other way, where you just do your exposition dumps to explain everything all at one time? I definitely want to hear your thoughts in the comment sections below. And if you're not a creator, and if you hypothetically was going to create a story, how would you approach that system? So if you like the video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe button. This is Brian Howard Blackson Jr., founder and creator and writer of Orion Comics, signing off.